A black woman casually helps a millionaire CEO fix his smartphone, but when he notices the ring on her finger, his expression changes completely, and what he does next leaves everyone speechless. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now subscribe to the channel and let's get started. Zara Johnson's fingers moved deftly over the broken smartphone screen, a skill perfected through years of working at Tech Fix, a small repair shop nestled between a laundromat and a Vietnamese restaurant in downtown Brooklyn. The shop was hardly bigger than a walk-in closet, but it was her domain, a place where she was the undisputed expert. At 32, Zara had fixed thousands of devices, from ancient flip phones to the latest models that cost more than her monthly rent. "Almost done," she muttered, more to herself than to the impatient businessman who stood on the other side of the counter, constantly checking his Rolex watch as if each second that passed was costing him thousands. Marcus Blackwood, CEO of Blackwood Enterprises, one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country, had stormed into her shop 20 minutes ago, demanding immediate service for his cracked and malfunctioning phone. No appointment, no pleasantries, just entitlement wrapped in a $3,000 suit. "How much longer?" he asked, his deep voice tinged with barely contained frustration. "I have a board meeting in 40 minutes. Zara didn't look up. "About 3 minutes less than when you asked 30 seconds ago, Mr. Blackwood." A woman waiting in the corner of the shop with a tablet in need of repair stifled a laugh, earning a cold glance from Marcus that would have made his employees tremble. But Zara remained unfazed, her focus entirely on the delicate circuitry beneath her fingertips. "There," she said finally, pressing the power button. The screen illuminated, revealing the company logo before transitioning to the home screen. "Good as new. I also took the liberty of installing a stronger tempered glass protector than the one you had before. It should withstand more aggressive handling." Marcus reached for the phone, his fingers brushing against hers. The brief contact sent an unexpected jolt through both of them, causing their eyes to meet for the first time since he'd entered the shop. Zara was struck by how intensely blue his eyes were, like shards of glacial ice set against his tanned skin and dark, perfectly trimmed beard. For Marcus, the moment stretched into something more significant. Behind the counter stood a woman with skin the color of burnished mahogany, her black curls pulled back into a practical ponytail, and eyes that reflected intelligence and defiance in equal measure. She wasn't conventionally beautiful by the standards of the women he typically dated, models and socialites who adorned his arm at corporate galas, but there was something magnetic about her presence. "How much do I owe you?" he asked, his voice noticeably softer. $120, Zara replied, already printing his receipt. "That includes the premium screen protector and data recovery." Marcus pulled out his wallet and handed her his black card without even glancing at it. "You're good at what you do." "I know," Zara said simply, processing his payment. "That's why I charge what I charge." As she handed him back his card and receipt, Marcus noticed something he hadn't before, a unique ring on her left hand. It wasn't an ordinary engagement ring. Instead, it featured an intricate design of intertwined metals that formed what looked like ancient symbols surrounding a small but flawless emerald. His expression changed so dramatically that Zara instinctively looked down at her hand, wondering if she'd somehow injured herself without noticing. "Is something wrong, Mr. Blackwood?" Marcus couldn't tear his eyes away from the ring. "Where did you get that?" The sudden intensity in his voice made the other customers in the shop look up from their phones. The woman with the tablet shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "My grandmother gave it to me," Zara answered cautiously, her right hand moving protectively over the ring. "It's been in my family for generations. Why?" Instead of answering, Marcus pulled out his own phone, the one she had just fixed, and quickly scrolled through his photo gallery until he found what he was looking for. He turned the screen toward her, showing an old sepia-toned photograph of a woman wearing what appeared to be the exact same ring. "This was my great-grandmother, Elizabeth," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. She was wearing that ring in every family photo until the day she disappeared in 1953. My family has been searching for it ever since." The shop fell silent. Zara stared at the photograph, then back at her ring, confusion written across her features. "That's impossible. This ring has been in my family for over 70 years. My grandmother Josephine gave it to me on her deathbed 5 years ago." "Josephine?" Marcus repeated, his complexion paling visibly. "Josephine Johnson?" Zara took a step back, alarm bells ringing in her mind. "How do you know my grandmother's name?" Marcus ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, momentarily disheveling it, a crack in his otherwise immaculate appearance. "Because according to my family's records, that was the name of the woman my great-grandfather accused of stealing the ring before she vanished from their household staff." The implications hung heavy in the air between them. Zara's grandmother, whom she had loved dearly and who had raised her after her parents died in a car accident when she was just 7, had never mentioned anything about working for a wealthy family or about the origins of the ring beyond saying it was their family's most precious heirloom. "You need to leave," Zara said, her voice tight with emotion. "Now!" Marcus didn't move. "Please, I've been searching for that ring my entire adult life. It's not just a piece of jewelry, it's the key to my family's legacy." "The key to your family's legacy?" Zara repeated incredulously. "This ring is my legacy. It's all I have left of my grandmother, and you come in here suggesting she was what? A thief?" Other customers were now openly watching the confrontation, some surreptitiously recording on their phones. The tension in the tiny shop was palpable. "I'm not suggesting anything," Marcus said, lowering his voice. "I'm trying to understand how the same ring that disappeared with my great-grandmother ended up with your family. There's more to this story than either of us knows." Zara was about to order him out again when an elderly man who had been quietly waiting his turn for service stood up from his chair in the corner. He had been so still and unobtrusive that Zara had almost forgotten he was there. "Excuse me," he said, his voice cracking with age but carrying a certain authority that made both Zara and Marcus turn to him. "I couldn't help but overhear, and I think I might know something about that ring." The old man approached the counter slowly, leaning heavily on a wooden cane. He was well dressed in an old-fashioned but immaculately maintained suit that seemed from another era. His dark skin was lined with the wisdom of years, and his eyes held a clarity that belied his aged appearance. "My name is Walter Green," he said, looking intently at the ring on Zara's finger. "I was just a boy working in the Blackwood household when Elizabeth Blackwood and Josephine Johnson disappeared. Everyone assumed they had run away together, but no one knew why. That ring," he pointed with a slightly trembling finger, "is only half of the story." Marcus stared at the old man in disbelief. "You worked for my family? Why have you never come forward?" Walter Green's eyes narrowed slightly. "Some stories were dangerous to tell in those days, young man. Some still are. But seeing the two of you here now, perhaps it's finally time for the truth to come out." Zara and Marcus exchanged glances, momentarily united in their confusion and curiosity. "What truth?" Zara asked, unconsciously twisting the ring on her finger. The old man looked around the small shop at the curious faces of the other customers. "This isn't the place. There are documents, photographs, evidence I've kept hidden for decades. If you both want to know the real story of that ring and what happened to Elizabeth Blackwood and Josephine Johnson, meet me at the Green Haven Retirement Community on Riverside Drive at 7 p.m. tonight. Ask for apartment 217. Without waiting for their response, Walter Green turned and made his slow way toward the exit. Just before he left, he paused and looked back at them. "Fair warning, what you learn tonight will change both your lives forever. Come together, or don't come at all. The story belongs to both of you, or neither." The bell above the door jingled as he disappeared onto the busy street, leaving Zara and Marcus staring after him in stunned silence. "Did that just happen?" Zara finally said, half to herself. Marcus checked his watch and cursed under his breath. My board meeting starts in 20 minutes. I can't miss it. It's about the merger that could double our company's value. Well, I have a business to run, Zara countered, gesturing to the waiting customers. I can't just drop everything because some old man makes cryptic statements about my grandmother. They stood at an impasse, two strangers connected by a mysterious ring and a shared history neither of them fully understood. Finally, Marcus pulled a business card from his inside pocket and placed it on the counter. I'll be there at 7. This is too important to ignore. If you decide to come, call me. I'll send a car for you. Zara didn't reach for the card. I can find my own way if I decide to go. Marcus nodded once, his CEO persona firmly back in place. Then I hope to see you there, Ms. Johnson. He turned and walked out, his expensive cologne lingering in the small space long after he was gone. Zara stared at the business card on the counter, her mind racing with questions. Who was Walter Green? What did he know about her grandmother? And why did Marcus Blackwood look at her ring as if he'd seen a ghost? The woman with the tablet approached the counter, breaking Zara's reverie. Sorry to interrupt your dramatic moment, honey, but are you going to fix my iPad today or what? Zara blinked, coming back to reality. Yes, of course, sorry about that. She took the tablet, trying to focus on the cracked screen instead of the weight of the ring on her finger. A ring that suddenly felt much heavier than it had that morning. As she worked, one question kept repeating in her mind. Would she go to Greenhaven tonight? Did she want to know the truth, even if it meant her beloved grandmother might not be who she thought she was? And could she trust Marcus Blackwood, a man whose family might have wronged hers decades ago? The afternoon stretched ahead, each minute bringing her closer to a decision that could change everything. The rest of Zara's workday passed in a blur of broken screens and water-damaged devices, but her mind remained fixated on the encounter with Marcus Blackwood and the mysterious Walter Green. By closing time, her normally organized thoughts were as tangled as the pile of charging cables in her desk drawer. "You're closing early?" asked Devon, her assistant, as Zara flipped the sign on the door to "closed at exactly 5:30 p.m. She usually stayed until at least 6:30, catching up on paperwork or starting on the next day's repairs. "I have somewhere to be," she replied, avoiding his curious gaze as she counted the day's receipts. Devon, a college student who worked part-time at the shop, raised an eyebrow. "Hot date?" Zara shot him a look that would have withered a less cheerful person. "No, just a meeting." "A meeting? On a Tuesday night?" Devon persisted, his grin widening. "Is it with that suit who came in earlier? The one who looked like he stepped out of GQ magazine?" "How did you—" Zara began, then stopped herself. "You weren't even here this morning." Devon laughed. 3 customers posted videos of your argument with him on TikTok. One already has over 20,000 views. Hot CEO and tech girl fight over mysterious ring is trending in local tags. Zara groaned. Social media was the last thing she needed right now. "Just finish stocking the display case, please. I need to get ready." In the tiny bathroom at the back of the shop, Zara splashed water on her face and stared at her reflection. Was she really considering meeting a strange old man at a retirement home based on a fantastical story about her grandmother? And with Marcus Blackwood, of all people, a man who had essentially accused her grandmother of theft? Her fingers traced the contours of her ring, feeling the familiar ridges and smooth emerald stone that had been a constant presence since her grandmother placed it on her finger with trembling hands 5 years ago. "Keep it safe," Josephine had whispered. "It's more valuable than you know." At the time, Zara had assumed she meant sentimentally valuable. Now she wondered what else her grandmother might have meant. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Marcus Blackwood. My driver can pick you up at 6:30. Just send the address." She hadn't given him her number. Of course, a man like him would have ways of getting information he wanted. It irritated her. but it also made her decision easier. She was definitely going now, if only to make sure he didn't try to claim her grandmother's ring. Zara texted back her address, adding, "I'll be ready at 6:30. To be clear, this doesn't mean I trust you." The reply came almost instantly. "I wouldn't expect you to. Yet." At exactly 6:30, a sleek black Maybach pulled up outside her Brooklyn apartment building. The driver, a woman in a crisp uniform, opened the door for her. "Ms. Johnson, Mr. Blackwood is already on his way to Green Haven. He asked me to bring you directly there." Part of Zara was relieved he wasn't in the car. It gave her more time to collect her thoughts. Another part was annoyed he'd assumed she'd want to travel separately. Then again, he'd been right. The Maybach glided through evening traffic toward Manhattan's Upper West Side. Through the tinted windows, Zara watched the city transition from her familiar Brooklyn neighborhood to the towering luxury of Manhattan. It was a journey she made rarely, despite the relative proximity. These were different worlds that seldom intersected. Green Haven Retirement Community turned out to be less of a community and more of a luxury apartment complex for the elderly, with a doorman, marble lobby, and tasteful classical music playing softly in the background. It looked more like a five-star hotel than any retirement home Zara had ever seen. Marcus was waiting in the lobby, having changed from his business suit to dark jeans and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than Zara's monthly rent. The casual clothes did nothing to diminish his commanding presence. "You came," he said, standing up as she approached. There was genuine relief in his voice. "I want answers," Zara replied simply. She'd changed too, into black jeans and a deep purple blouse that her grandmother had always said brought out the warmth in her eyes. She'd kept her makeup minimal, but had let her curls down from their usual ponytail. Marcus nodded, his eyes briefly taking in her appearance before returning to her face. "So do I. Shall we?" They took the elevator to the second floor in awkward silence. The hallway was lined with elegant sconces that cast a warm glow over numbered doors. They found 217 at the end of the corridor. Marcus knocked, and a muffled voice called for them to enter. Walter Green's apartment was not what Zara had expected. Instead of the typical retirement home decor, the space looked like a small museum. The walls were covered with framed photographs and news clippings from different eras. Glass display cases housed artifacts and documents. Books filled floor-to-ceiling shelves, and a large antique desk dominated one corner, covered with papers arranged in neat stacks. Walter himself sat in a high-backed leather chair near a window overlooking the Hudson River. In the fading evening light, he looked even older than he had in the shop, but his eyes were sharp and alert. "You both came," he said, sounding pleased but not surprised. "Good. We don't have much time." "Time for what exactly?" Marcus asked, remaining standing while Zara perched cautiously on the edge of a velvet sofa. "You claim to know something about my great-grandmother and Ms. Johnson's grandmother." Walter nodded slowly. "Not just know something, Mr. Blackwood. I'm the last living person who knows the whole truth. And after 97 years on this earth, I don't intend to take those secrets to my grave." He gestured toward a silver tea service on a side table. "Help yourselves. This will be a long conversation." Zara and Marcus exchanged glances but didn't move toward the tea. "Let me see the ring properly, child," Walter said, extending a gnarled hand toward Zara. Reluctantly, she approached his chair and held out her left hand. Walter didn't touch the ring but studied it carefully, his expression a mixture of reverence and sorrow. "Just as beautiful as the day Elizabeth wore it," he murmured. "The emerald key, they called it?" "Key to what?" Zara asked. Walter looked up at her, then at Marcus. "To the Blackwood fortune, of course. The real fortune, not the pale imitation your family controls today, Mr. Blackwood." Marcus stiffened. "Blackwood Enterprises is worth billions. Hardly a pale imitation of anything." Walter made a dismissive gesture. "Money isn't the only form of wealth, young man, but we'll get to that." He turned back to Zara. Your grandmother never told you about the ring's origins? Zara shook her head. Only that it was a family heirloom and that I should keep it safe. She was protecting you, Walter said with a nod. The less you knew, the safer you were. But now, he sighed deeply. Now things are different. The last of them died 3 days ago. The last of who? Marcus demanded. The conspiracy, Walter replied, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. The men who killed Elizabeth Blackwood and tried to kill your grandmother, Ms. Johnson. Zara felt as if the floor had dropped away beneath her. Killed? My grandmother died peacefully in her sleep 5 years ago. I'm speaking of the attempt in 1953, Walter clarified, when they burned down the cottage where she and Elizabeth were hiding. Josephine survived, but Elizabeth... His voice trailed off and he closed his eyes briefly. Well, that's where our story really begins. He gestured toward an old photograph on the wall. Marcus stepped closer to examine it. The image showed a grand estate, a mansion surrounded by manicured gardens and a lake in the distance. Blackwood Manor, 1950, Marcus read from the small plaque beneath the photograph. This was my family's estate in Connecticut. It was sold in the 1970s before I was born. Sold to cover gambling debts, Walter confirmed. Your grandfather's, specifically. He never recovered from what happened to his mother. Walter rose from his chair with surprising agility and moved to a small writing desk. He unlocked a drawer with a key he wore around his neck and removed a leather-bound journal. Elizabeth Blackwood's diary, he explained, handling it with reverence. I've kept it safe all these years, waiting for the right time, the right people. He held it out to Marcus. Perhaps you should read it first. Marcus took the journal as if it might crumble to dust in his hands. The leather was cracked with age, but the pages were intact. He carefully opened to the first entry, dated January 15, 1950. Today I discovered something that changes everything, Marcus read aloud. The ring my husband gifted me on our 10th anniversary is not merely jewelry, but something far more significant. According to the documents hidden in Richard's study, it is one of 2 keys to a legacy that predates the founding of this country. Richard has been lying to me about his business, about his travels, about the source of our family's wealth. I'm afraid of what I might uncover if I continue searching, but more afraid of remaining ignorant. Whatever storm is coming, I must be prepared. Marcus looked up from the journal, his expression troubled. This doesn't make sense. What legacy? What 2 keys? Walter gestured for him to continue reading, but Zara interrupted. What does any of this have to do with my grandmother? She demanded. And why would she have Elizabeth's ring if they weren't? She trailed off as a possibility occurred to her. Were they together, romantically? It was complicated, Walter replied, and dangerous in those times. A wealthy white socialite and a black maid? It was unheard of. But that's not the whole story, not by far. He turned to Marcus. Keep reading. Marcus turned the page and continued. February 3, 1950. The ring responds to its twin. When Josephine's mother's ring came near mine during tea service, both stones glowed momentarily. No one else noticed, but we did. Mrs. Johnson has been hiding secrets of her own. Her family's connection to the original expedition cannot be coincidental. I've invited her to meet privately tomorrow. My great-grandmother had a ring too? Zara asked, confused. But my grandmother never mentioned another ring. Walter nodded gravely. Because it was destroyed the night of the fire, the same fire that killed Elizabeth. That ring, he pointed to Zara's hand, is now the only key left. Key to what? Marcus and Zara asked in unison. Walter walked to a large painting on the far wall, a landscape of a mountain range that looked vaguely familiar to Zara, though she couldn't place it. He carefully removed the painting to reveal a wall safe. Before I show you, Walter said, his hand hovering over the safe's dial. You need to understand that once this knowledge is shared, there's no going back. Your lives as you've known them will be over. Are you prepared for that? The question hung in the air between them. Zara looked at Marcus, finding his expression as uncertain as she felt. This was all happening too fast, spiraling from a simple ring into talk of conspiracies and hidden fortunes. "Why now?" Marcus finally asked. "Why tell us this story after keeping it secret for 70 years? Walter's face grew solemn. "Because 3 days ago, Victor Hammond died." "The tech billionaire?" Marcus asked, clearly recognizing the name of the recently deceased founder of one of the world's largest technology companies. "Yes," Walter confirmed. "And with his death, the last member of the group that has been hunting for the Emerald Keys is gone. Their children don't know the truth. They believe it's just a family myth. For the first time in 7 decades, it might be safe to reclaim what was stolen." He fixed them both with an intense stare. "But only if you work together." Walter's gnarled fingers moved deftly over the safe's dial, turning it with practiced precision. The lock released with a soft click, and he pulled the heavy door open. From within, he removed a weathered leather document case bound with a faded ribbon. "Elizabeth entrusted this to me the day before she died," Walter explained, his voice thick with emotion. "She knew they were closing in. She made me promise to keep it hidden until it was safe to reveal the truth." "And you've kept that promise for 70 years?" Zara asked, both impressed and skeptical. "Some promises transcend time, young lady." Walter carefully untied the ribbon. "Elizabeth and Josephine saved my life when I was just a boy. Loyalty isn't measured in years." He laid the contents of the case on a table, a stack of yellowed documents, several photographs, and an intricately detailed map that appeared to show a mountainous region with markings in faded red ink. "The Blackwood fortune," Walter began, "did not originate in industry or banking as the family history claims. It began with a discovery in 1850, when Jeremiah Blackwood and Solomon Johnson returned from an expedition to Brazil with something extraordinary." "Johnson?" Zara interrupted. "As in my family?" Walter nodded. "Solomon Johnson was your great-great-great-grandfather. He was a freed man who worked as a guide and translator. Jeremiah Blackwood hired him for the expedition because of his expertise in indigenous languages." He pointed to one of the photographs, an image of 2 men standing before a canvas tent in what appeared to be a jungle clearing. One was white, dressed in explorer's garb with a full beard and stern expression. The other was black, taller and leaner, with intelligent eyes that seemed to pierce through time. They discovered ruins deep in the Amazon that predated any known civilization in the region, Walter continued, and within those ruins, a chamber filled with artifacts of incalculable value, both monetary and historical. But the greatest discovery was this. He carefully unfolded a brittle piece of parchment that contained a detailed drawing of 2 identical rings, each featuring a central emerald surrounded by intricate metalwork. "The Emerald Keys," Marcus murmured, recognition dawning on his face as he glanced at Zara's hand. "Yes," Walter confirmed. "According to the indigenous people who guided them, the rings were created by an ancient civilization as keys to their greatest treasure, a treasure they hid from the world because its power was too dangerous in the wrong hands." "This sounds like something out of an adventure movie," Zara said skeptically. Walter smiled patiently. "History is often more fantastic than fiction, Ms. Johnson. Jeremiah and Solomon removed the rings from the site, believing them to be merely valuable artifacts, but they soon discovered the rings had unusual properties." "Properties?" Marcus asked, leaning forward. "What kind of properties?" "They seem to respond to each other when in proximity, for one," Walter replied, "and each contained markings that, when properly aligned, revealed coordinates to a specific location, the site of the true treasure." Zara unconsciously twisted the ring on her finger. "So these rings are some kind of ancient GPS?" "In the simplest terms, yes," Walter said. But Jeremiah and Solomon disagreed about what to do with their discovery. Jeremiah wanted to exploit it for profit. Solomon believed the treasure should remain hidden, as the indigenous people had warned. Their partnership dissolved in acrimony. "Let me guess," Marcus interjected. "My ancestor took both rings and cut Solomon out of the discovery." Walter shook his head. "Not quite. Solomon managed to keep one ring, the very one Ms. Johnson wears now. Jeremiah kept the other and returned to America claiming all the credit and bringing with him enough artifacts to establish the beginning of the Blackwood fortune. Solomon settled in New York with his family, keeping the ring's true nature secret, passing it down through generations with only the warning to keep it safe. But if each family had one ring, Zara reasoned, and both rings are needed to find this treasure, then neither family could claim it alone. Precisely, Walter nodded. Which is why the rings remained separate for decades, until Elizabeth Blackwood married into the family in 1938. Her husband, Richard Blackwood, was obsessed with finding the second ring and completing what his grandfather had started. Marcus paced the room, processing the information. So my great-grandfather was searching for the other ring, the one Solomon Johnson kept. Yes, Walter confirmed. And in 1949 he located it. The Johnson family had fallen on hard times during the Depression. Your grandmother, Ms. Johnson, took a position as a maid in the Blackwood household, unaware that her employer was actually hunting for her family's heirloom. Zara felt a chill. Did he steal it from her? He tried, Walter said grimly, but Elizabeth discovered his plan and warned Josephine. By then they had formed a deep bond. The way Walter hesitated made it clear to Zara that deep bond was a euphemism. Her grandmother and Elizabeth had been in love. Richard became suspicious, Walter continued. He hired private investigators to follow them. When he discovered the nature of their relationship and realized that Elizabeth had betrayed him by warning Josephine, he was furious. But by then, Elizabeth had also discovered something else, something about the true source of the treasure that horrified her. Walter turned to one of the documents, a letter written in elegant, flowing script. Elizabeth wrote this to her brother the night before the fire. What Richard and his associates planned to do with the discovery is monstrous. The indigenous warnings were not superstition but wisdom. This power was hidden for a reason, and to unleash it now, especially in the hands of men like Richard, would be catastrophic. Josephine and I plan to take both rings far away, somewhere they can never be found. If anything happens to us, know that we did what we believed was right, not just for our families but for humanity. A heavy silence fell over the room as the implications of Elizabeth's words sank in. What was this power she referred to? Marcus finally asked. Walter sighed deeply. That I don't know. Elizabeth never shared the full details with me. For my protection, she said. All I know is that it was significant enough that she was willing to leave behind her life of privilege and flee with Josephine. But they didn't get far, Zara said softly. No, Walter confirmed, his eyes growing distant with memory. They made it to a small cottage in the Catskills. I helped them escape, driving them under cover of night. But Richard and his associates, a group that called themselves the Consortium, tracked them down within a week. He pulled out another photograph, this one showing the charred remains of a small cabin. They set fire to the cottage while Elizabeth and Josephine were inside. Josephine managed to escape through a back window, but Elizabeth... His voice cracked. Elizabeth went back for the journal and never came out. Zara felt tears prickling behind her eyes for a great-grandmother she had never known. And the second ring? Elizabeth's ring? Destroyed in the fire according to the official report, Walter replied. The consortium searched the ruins but never found it. They assumed it had melted in the intense heat. But you don't believe that? Marcus asked, noting Walter's careful phrasing. Walter's eyes twinkled despite the somber topic. I believe Elizabeth Blackwood was a clever woman who wouldn't have left such an important object where it could be easily found. Fire or no fire. So where is it? Zara and Marcus asked almost simultaneously. Walter smiled enigmatically. "That, I believe, is something only your ring can reveal, Miss Johnson." Zara looked down at her grandmother's ring with new eyes. "How?" "The diary mentions that when the two rings were brought together, they not only responded to each other but also revealed information that neither ring showed individually," Walter explained. "I believe Elizabeth may have encoded the location of her ring within yours." Marcus approached Zara, his expression intent. "May I see it more closely?" Reluctantly, Zara extended her hand. Marcus didn't touch the ring but leaned in to examine it, his face just inches from hers. Zara caught the subtle scent of his cologne, something woodsy and expensive, and tried to ignore the unexpected flutter in her stomach. "The metalwork," Marcus murmured. "It's not just decorative. These patterns look almost like a language," Zara finished for him, having noticed the same thing now that she was really looking at the ring. "Or coordinates, maybe?" Their eyes met, a moment of connection born of shared discovery. Walter watched them with approval. "Now you're beginning to understand why I waited for both of you. This mystery cannot be solved individually." "But why now?" Marcus asked again, stepping back from Zara. "You said Victor Hammond's death made it safe, but you haven't explained why." Walter's expression darkened. "Because Victor Hammond was the last surviving member of the original consortium. His father was Richard Blackwood's closest associate and helped him track down Elizabeth and Josephine. The Hammond family has been searching for your ring for decades, Ms. Johnson. They've eliminated anyone who got too close to the truth." "Eliminated?" Zara repeated, a chill running down her spine. "You mean murdered?" "I mean exactly that," Walter said grimly. 3 historians who investigated the Blackwood-Johnson expedition died under accidental circumstances in the 1990s. A journalist who began connecting the dots disappeared in 2008. The consortium has protected this secret viciously. "But why would my family not be involved in this consortium if the discovery began with my great-grandfather?" Marcus asked, troubled by the implications. "Because Richard Blackwood was ousted from the group in 1960, Walter explained. "He became unstable after Elizabeth's death, consumed by guilt and paranoia. The consortium saw him as a liability and systematically stripped him of his power and much of his wealth. By the time your grandfather inherited what was left of the Blackwood Empire, it was a shell of its former glory." "And all this time my grandmother had the ring they were looking for," Zara marveled. "How did she stay hidden?" "She changed her name after the fire, moved frequently, and lived quietly," Walter said. "The consortium believed she had died along with Elizabeth. It wasn't until she gave you the ring 5 years ago that they picked up the trail again." Zara's blood ran cold. "Are you saying they've been watching me?" Walter's silence was answer enough. "This is insane," Marcus muttered, running a hand through his hair. "Hammond Technologies is one of our biggest competitors. We've been in negotiations with them for months about a possible merger." "A merger that would give them access to your family archives," Walter pointed out. "Archives that might contain clues to the rings." Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. "Speaking of which, I just got a message from Hammond's board. They want to accelerate the merger talks in light of Victor's death. Emergency meeting tomorrow morning." "They're moving quickly," Walter observed. "Victor's son, Edward, must be taking control sooner than expected." "So what do we do now?" Zara asked, feeling overwhelmed by revelations that had transformed her understanding of her family history in less than an hour. Walter carefully gathered the documents and returned them to the safe. "Tonight, you take the diary and these copies I've prepared. Study them. Learn your shared history, and most importantly, stay together. Now that you've been seen with each other, the consortium, or whatever remains of it, will be watching." "Stay together," Zara repeated incredulously. "I have a business to run. He has a company to manage." "And you both have lives you'd like to keep," Walter replied gravely. "Separately, you're vulnerable. Together, with both families' knowledge combined, you might stand a chance at uncovering the truth, and staying alive long enough to decide what to do with it. The night air carried a biting chill as Zara and Marcus exited Green Haven. They stood awkwardly under the building's awning, Walter's copies of Elizabeth's documents and the original diary tucked securely in a leather portfolio Marcus carried. "This is crazy," Zara said finally, breaking the silence. 24 hours ago, my biggest concern was ordering more screen protectors for the shop." Marcus gave a humorless laugh. "And mine was a quarterly earnings report." He glanced at his watch, a timepiece that probably cost more than all the inventory in Zara's store. "It's almost 10. Where should we go?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications. Walter had insisted they stay together, but the practicalities of that arrangement hadn't been discussed. "I'm not going to your place," Zara said quickly, pulling her jacket tighter around herself. "I don't know you." "Fair enough," Marcus conceded. "But your apartment might not be safe either. If Walter is right about people watching you because of the ring..." Zara hadn't considered that her small Brooklyn apartment might already be compromised. The thought sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with the cool night air. "A hotel, then," she suggested, trying to keep her voice steady. "Neutral territory." Marcus nodded. "I know a place where we can get a suite with enough space to spread out these documents. Private, secure, and they don't ask questions." Zara raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like you've needed anonymous accommodations before." "It's not what you're thinking," Marcus replied, a hint of defensiveness in his tone. "Sometimes business negotiations require discretion." "I'm sure they do," Zara muttered, but followed him to the waiting Maybach nonetheless. As the car pulled away from the curb, neither noticed the dark sedan that had been parked across the street, or the way it smoothly entered traffic 3 cars behind them. The hotel Marcus had in mind turned out to be the Archer, a boutique luxury establishment in Midtown Manhattan. The suite he secured with a brief phone call and an apparently well-known name was larger than Zara's entire apartment, with a spacious living area, 2 bedrooms, and floor-to-ceiling windows offering a glittering view of the city. "Will this work?" Marcus asked as the bellhop departed with a generous tip. Zara stood in the center of the living room, feeling distinctly out of place among the sleek, modern furnishings. "It's fine. Let's just get started on these documents." They cleared the dining table and began carefully arranging Walter's copies and the diary. Zara removed her jacket but hesitated when Marcus began loosening his tie. "What?" he asked, noticing her discomfort. "I've been wearing this noose since 6 a.m. I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable." Zara shook her head. "It's not that. It's just this whole situation. I repair phones for a living. I don't uncover ancient conspiracies or hide from shadowy organizations in luxury hotel suites with strange men." "Strange men?" Marcus repeated, looking genuinely offended. "I'm a Fortune 500 CEO. My face was on the cover of Business Weekly last month." Despite everything, Zara laughed. That's exactly what a strange man would say to sound less strange. The unexpected sound of her laughter seemed to break some of the tension. Marcus smiled. A real smile that reached his eyes and transformed his face from merely handsome to almost boyishly charming. "Fair point," he conceded. "Look, I know this is bizarre for both of us, but we're in it now, so let's try to make sense of what Walter gave us." They focused on the documents, starting with the diary. Elizabeth's elegant handwriting filled pages with observations about the rings, the Blackwood family's secrets, and her growing feelings for Josephine. The entries confirmed much of what Walter had told them, but with intimate details that painted a more vivid picture of the 2 women's relationship. "Listen to this," Zara said, reading from an entry dated April 1952. "Jay showed me photographs of her family's ancestral home in Brazil, near where the expedition took place. She says the patterns on her ring match markings found in caves throughout the region. Her grandfather told her stories of a civilization that possessed knowledge far beyond their time, knowledge they ultimately chose to hide from the world. I find myself wondering if Richard and his associates understand what they're truly seeking, or if they're blinded by greed and the mere promise of gold. Marcus leaned closer to look at the page over her shoulder. There's more here about the rings specifically. When brought together, the emerald keys reveal their secrets only under specific conditions. Jay says her grandmother called it the light of truth, moonlight filtered through water. We tried it tonight, holding the rings together in a basin of water under the full moon. The stones glowed with an inner light, and for a moment I swore I could see markings appear on the surface of the water, like a map forming out of light itself, but it faded too quickly to discern any details. Moonlight through water? Zara repeated skeptically. That sounds like mystical nonsense. Said the woman wearing a mystical ring that supposedly leads to an ancient treasure, Marcus pointed out dryly. Zara looked down at her ring, turning it so the emerald caught the light. My grandmother never mentioned any of this. She was practical, down to earth, not the type to believe in magical rings and hidden treasures. Maybe she was protecting you, Marcus suggested. Or maybe after everything that happened, losing Elizabeth, being hunted by the consortium, she just wanted a normal life. The tenderness in his voice surprised Zara. She looked up to find him watching her with an expression that seemed almost sympathetic. It was a stark contrast to the arrogant businessman who had stormed into her shop that morning. "What about your family?" she asked. "Did they ever mention any of this?" Marcus shook his head. The Blackwood family history I was taught focused on traditional industries, banking, real estate, later technology, nothing about expeditions to Brazil or ancient artifacts. He frowned. Though my father did have an unusual interest in Hammond technologies, he always told me to watch them closely, that they weren't to be trusted. Seems like sound advice, considering they might have been behind multiple murders, Zara remarked. They continued through the documents, piecing together a timeline of events. By midnight, they had constructed a rough chronology on the hotel stationery. 1850. Jeremiah Blackwood and Solomon Johnson discover ruins in Brazil and find the emerald keys. 1851. Partnership dissolves, each keeps one ring. 1923. Richard Blackwood begins searching for the second ring. 1938. Elizabeth marries Richard Blackwood. 1949. Josephine Johnson takes position at Blackwood household, meets Elizabeth. 1950. Elizabeth discovers the truth about the rings and the consortium's plans. 1952. Elizabeth and Josephine's relationship develops. They begin experimenting with the rings. 1953. Elizabeth and Josephine flee with both rings. Elizabeth dies in fire. Her ring presumed destroyed. 1960. Richard Blackwood ousted from consortium due to instability. 1970s. Blackwood fortune diminishes. Estate sold. 1990s. 3 historians investigating the Blackwood-Johnson expedition die under suspicious circumstances. 2008. Journalist disappears after connecting dots. 2020. Josephine Johnson dies, passes ring to Zara. 2025. Victor Hammond dies. Marcus and Zara meet. There are still so many gaps, Zara said, rubbing her tired eyes. We don't know what the treasure actually is, where it's located, or what happened to Elizabeth's ring. Marcus stretched, his dress shirt pulling tight across his shoulders. Or who's running the consortium now that Victor Hammond is gone? As if in answer to his question, his phone buzzed with an incoming email. Marcus opened it, then suddenly sat straighter, his expression darkening. "What is it?" Zara asked. "It's from Edward Hammond, Victor's son. The merger meeting has been moved up to 7 a.m. tomorrow." He turned the phone so Zara could see the message. And look at the subject line. The email's subject read, "Urgent Meeting Ray, Emerald Acquisition." It could be a coincidence, Zara suggested, not sounding convinced even to herself. Emerald could be a project name or something. Maybe, Marcus acknowledged, but the last line bothers me more. Zara read the final sentence of the email. "I trust you'll bring all relevant parties to the discussion. It's time we combined our family legacies. He knows, she whispered, about us meeting, about the ring. Marcus nodded grimly. I think Walter was right. We've been watched since the moment you fixed my phone. He began pacing the suite. I need to respond. If I don't show up tomorrow, it will raise suspicions. You're not actually considering going, are you? Zara asked incredulously. After everything Walter told us? I'm considering playing along, Marcus clarified. If Hammond thinks I'm oblivious to the true nature of the merger, it gives us time to figure out our next move. Zara wasn't convinced. And what about me? Walter said we should stay together. You'll come with me, Marcus decided. As my technical consultant, it makes sense. My phone was damaged, you fixed it expertly, and I'm considering bringing you on to oversee device maintenance for the company. Zara stared at him. That's your cover story? That you hired the owner of a tiny repair shop as a corporate consultant after meeting her once? Yes, Marcus said with complete confidence. Because it's exactly the kind of impulsive decision people expect from me. I've built my reputation on unconventional moves. Before Zara could argue further, a text message alert chimed on her phone. It was from Devon, her assistant. Hey boss, weird guys came by the shop after closing asking about you. Said they were friends but seemed sketchy. Didn't let them in. Everything okay? Zara showed the message to Marcus, her hand trembling slightly. They're looking for me already. Marcus read the message, his jaw tightening. Text him back. Tell him you're fine but taking a few personal days. Don't mention where you are or who you're with. As Zara typed the response, Marcus moved to the windows and discreetly scanned the street below. We should get some rest. Tomorrow will be challenging. I'm not sure I can sleep, Zara admitted, setting down her phone. Try, Marcus advised. I'll take first watch. Watch? You really think they'd come after us here? The look Marcus gave her was deadly serious. I think we're dealing with people who have murdered to keep this secret before. So yes, I'm taking precautions. Zara reluctantly retreated to one of the bedrooms but left the door ajar. Through the gap, she could see Marcus sitting at the dining table, the soft glow of his laptop illuminating his features as he reviewed more of the documents. Despite her anxiety, exhaustion soon overtook her, and she drifted into a fitful sleep. She dreamed of her grandmother and a woman who must have been Elizabeth, both young and beautiful, holding their hands over a basin of water, watching as light danced across its surface. In her dream, the water formed an image, a mountain she recognized. Just as the location became clear in her mind, a thunderous crash jolted her awake. Zara sat bolt upright in the unfamiliar bed, heart pounding. Through the partially open door, she saw Marcus on his feet, facing the suite's entrance where the door hung from broken hinges. 3 men in dark clothing stood in the doorway, and the one in front held a gun pointed directly at Marcus's chest. Mr. Blackwood, the armed man said with chilling calm, I believe you have something that belongs to the Hammond family. 2 things, actually. His gaze shifted to the bedroom door, finding Zara's terrified face in the darkness. And one of them just woke up. Time seemed to slow as Zara processed the scene before her. Marcus standing rigid in the living area, facing 3 armed men who had just broken into their suite. Her mind raced through options, all of them bad. The intruders blocked the only exit. They were on the 12th floor, so windows weren't an option. And her phone was on the nightstand, too far to reach without being noticed. Edward sends his regards, the lead intruder said, his gun unwavering. He was quite impressed with how quickly you 2 found each other. It took us decades to track down that ring. Marcus kept his hands visible, his posture calm despite the weapon aimed at his chest. I don't know what you're talking about. We're here for a business meeting. The man smiled coldly. Let's not waste time with denials, Mr. Blackwood. Walter Green has been under surveillance for years. We know he contacted you both today. Zara's breath caught. Poor Walter. Had they put him in danger by visiting him? "The old man is fine, Miss Johnson," the intruder said, as if reading her thoughts. "For now, his age provides certain immunities. The same cannot be said for you two." He gestured to one of his companions, who moved toward the dining table where Elizabeth's diary and the documents were still spread out. "We'll be taking those," the leader continued, "along with the ring, of course." "And if I refuse?" Zara asked, her voice steadier than she felt. The man's expression didn't change. "Then we'll take the ring and leave the finger behind. Your choice." Marcus subtly shifted his position, placing himself more directly between the gunman and Zara's doorway. What does Edward Hammond want with an old family heirloom? He's about to inherit a tech empire worth billions. "Some treasures transcend mere wealth, Mr. Blackwood, as your ancestors well knew." The leader nodded to his second companion, who started toward Zara's bedroom. "Get the ring." What happened next unfolded so quickly that Zara would later struggle to reconstruct the sequence of events. As the second man approached her door, Marcus suddenly reached beneath the dining table and flipped it upward, sending documents flying and creating a momentary distraction. In the same fluid motion, he lunged for the light switch, plunging the suite into darkness except for the city glow from the windows. A gunshot cracked through the space, followed by the sound of breaking glass. Someone grunted in pain. Zara dropped to the floor instinctively, crawling toward the bathroom connected to her bedroom. "Zara, bathroom now!" Marcus's voice commanded from somewhere in the darkness. She scrambled across the carpet, adrenaline overriding her fear. Once inside the bathroom, she locked the door and pressed her back against it, heart hammering in her chest. More shouts and thumps came from the suite beyond, then another gunshot. "Marcus!" she called out, terrified for him. Instead of an answer, something heavy slammed against the bathroom door. Zara jumped away as it burst open, revealing the silhouette of a man. She grabbed the nearest object, a heavy marble soap dish, and prepared to swing. "It's me!" Marcus hissed, closing the door behind him and locking it again. "We have maybe 30 seconds. Relief flooded through her, followed quickly by confusion as Marcus immediately turned to the shower and turned it on. "What are you—" "Service elevator," he interrupted, moving to the window. "This hotel has an odd layout. The service elevator shaft runs along the exterior wall here." He was working on the window latch, which seemed to be stuck. Outside the bathroom door, they could hear the intruders ransacking the bedroom, getting closer. "How do you know that?" Zara asked, keeping her voice low. Marcus shot her a quick look, a hint of his earlier arrogance returning. "I make it my business to know escape routes. Did you think I chose this hotel randomly?" The window finally yielded with a soft click. Marcus pushed it open, revealing a narrow ledge and, just beyond it, the metal exterior of what did indeed appear to be an elevator shaft. "You can't be serious," Zara whispered, peering down at the dizzying drop to the street below. "Deadly serious," Marcus replied. "It's this, or see if they're bluffing about taking your finger." A bang on the bathroom door punctuated his point. "They're coming through," Zara gasped. Marcus climbed onto the ledge. "It's only about 2 feet to the service panel. I'll go first, then help you across." "If we fall, we won't," he said with such conviction that Zara almost believed him. Marcus balanced on the narrow ledge, then leaped the short distance to the elevator shaft. His fingers found purchase on the maintenance ladder rungs attached to its side. He turned back, extending one hand toward her. "Now you." The bathroom door splintered as Zara climbed onto the ledge. She looked at Marcus's outstretched hand, then at the terrifying gap between them. Another crash against the door decided for her. Zara jumped. Her body slammed against the metal exterior of the shaft, Marcus's strong grip the only thing keeping her from plummeting to the street. For one heart-stopping moment, she dangled by his hand alone before her feet found a rung of the maintenance ladder. "Hold on to the ladder," Marcus instructed, helping guide her hands to the metal rungs. "We need to climb down to the 10th floor. There's a maintenance door there." How do you know that? Zara demanded again, clinging desperately to the ladder as wind buffeted her body. I own stock in this hotel chain, Marcus replied, already beginning to descend. Now climb. They had made it down one floor when Zara heard shouting from the bathroom window above. Looking up, she saw one of the intruders leaning out, pointing down at them. Faster, Marcus urged. They scrambled down the ladder, the metal rungs cold and slippery under Zara's sweating palms. Each movement sent jolts of terror through her as the ground, still 10 stories below, seemed to beckon with deadly promise. When they reached the maintenance door, Marcus worked quickly to open it, revealing a dimly lit service corridor beyond. They tumbled inside, both breathing heavily from exertion and fear. Are you hurt? Marcus asked, scanning her body for injuries. No, Zara managed, though her hands were scraped raw from the ladder. She looked at Marcus more carefully and noticed a dark stain spreading on his left sleeve. But you're bleeding. Marcus glanced at his arm as if just noticing the injury. Bullet grazed me. It's nothing. It's not nothing, Zara insisted, tearing a strip from the bottom of her blouse to create a makeshift bandage. As she wrapped it around his arm, she noticed he was holding Elizabeth's diary. You saved it? I grabbed what I could, Marcus replied. Most of Walter's copies are still up there, but they were just that, copies. This is the original. Zara finished tying the bandage. Thank you. For not leaving me behind. Something flickered in Marcus's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, that she would think he might abandon her. Before he could respond, the sound of a door slamming open at the end of the corridor spurred them into motion again. This way, Marcus said, leading her through the service area to a stairwell. We need to get to the garage. My driver should still be there. They descended the stairs as quietly as speed would allow, listening for pursuers above or below. When they reached the parking level, Marcus cautiously pushed open the door and scanned the area. Clear, he whispered. The car should be in Section D. They moved swiftly between parked vehicles, staying low. When they reached Section D, Marcus's Maybach was indeed waiting, but there was no sign of his driver. Where is she? Zara asked, anxiety creeping back into her voice. Marcus approached the car cautiously, then gestured for Zara to stay back. He peered through the window, and his expression hardened. She's inside, not moving. Fear gripped Zara's heart. Is she? I don't know. Marcus tried the door, found it unlocked, and carefully checked the driver. She's breathing. Looks like she was drugged. He gently moved the unconscious woman to the back seat. I'll drive. As they pulled out of the parking garage, Zara looked back for signs of pursuit but saw none. That seems too easy. It won't be, Marcus assured her, deftly navigating the car through late-night Manhattan traffic. They'll track the car. We need to switch vehicles as soon as possible. Where are we going? Somewhere they won't expect, Marcus replied, making a sharp turn that sent them heading toward the Brooklyn Bridge. How do you feel about a family reunion? What are you talking about? Zara asked, confusion momentarily overriding her fear. According to Elizabeth's diary, your grandmother fled to Brazil after the fire, right? Stayed with her cousins for almost a year before returning to the U.S. under a new name? Zara nodded slowly. That's what Walter said, yes. Well, during that time, she apparently trusted someone with information about Elizabeth's ring, Marcus explained. The last entry in the diary mentions a letter Josephine sent to her cousin Miguel in São Paulo, a letter containing something Elizabeth had entrusted only to her. And you think this cousin, or his descendants, might still have this letter? Zara asked skeptically. It's our best lead, Marcus said, and it gets us out of the country while we figure out our next move. Zara stared at him. You want to go to Brazil? Now? Just like that? You have a better plan? Marcus countered. We've got Hammond's people trying to kill us, my company about to be swallowed by their corporation, and your only protection is a ring we don't fully understand. Yes, I want to go to Brazil. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. After a few swipes and taps, he handed it to Zara. On the screen was a confirmation for 2 first-class tickets to São Paulo, departing in 3 hours from JFK. "When did you book these?" Zara asked, stunned. "While you were sleeping," Marcus admitted. "I had a feeling after reading the diary that Brazil might be our next move. The attack just accelerated the timeline." "You made travel plans without even asking me?" Zara's voice rose in indignation. "You can't just decide." "They were going to cut off your fingers, Zara," Marcus interrupted sharply. "These people aren't playing games, and neither can we. You can be angry with me for making assumptions, or you can recognize that right now, we need to get as far away from New York as possible. Preferably to a place where we might actually find answers." Zara fell silent, processing his words. As much as she hated to admit it, he was right. Her normal life had evaporated the moment Marcus Blackwood recognized her grandmother's ring. There was no going back, only forward into whatever mystery the emerald keys held. "Fine," she finally conceded. "But when we're safely on the plane, you're telling me everything you read in that diary while I was asleep." "Deal," Marcus agreed, glancing at her with newfound respect. As they crossed the Brooklyn Bridge, Zara twisted the emerald ring on her finger. In the passing streetlights, she could swear the stone glowed momentarily, not just reflecting light, but generating it from within. "It's responding to something," she whispered. Marcus glanced at her hand. The diary mentioned that the rings react when they're moving toward their counterpart. If Elizabeth's ring survived, then it could be calling to this one. Zara finished his thought, like it's alive somehow. The emerald pulsed again, stronger this time, casting a brief green glow over the car's interior. Both Zara and Marcus fell silent, watching the uncanny light that seemed to strengthen with each mile that carried them toward JFK International Airport and their uncertain future in Brazil. The airport hummed with the peculiar energy of a place that never truly sleeps. Even at 3 a.m., travelers moved through JFK's international terminal with the dazed efficiency of people existing between time zones, between worlds. Zara and Marcus blended in as best they could. 2 more sleep-deprived passengers preparing for a long-haul flight. After abandoning the Maybach in long-term parking, with Marcus's driver, now conscious but groggy, safely in a taxi home, they had entered the terminal separately as an extra precaution. Marcus went through security first, while Zara waited 15 minutes before following. They wouldn't reunite until boarding. Sitting alone in the gate area, Zara had time to process the surreal turn her life had taken. 24 hours ago, she had been Zara Johnson, small business owner with a steady, if unexciting life. Now she was a fugitive of sorts, fleeing the country with a man she barely knew, pursued by people willing to kill for the ring she wore. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "All clear on my end. You?" Marcus had insisted they ditch their original phones at the hotel and purchased burner phones from a 24-hour bodega on their way to the airport. Old-school precaution, he'd called it. "No problems," she texted back, "but I think people are staring at my hand." This wasn't paranoia. She'd caught at least 3 different travelers glancing curiously at her ring, which continued to emit a faint but noticeable green glow in the dimly lit terminal. "Cover it until boarding," came his swift reply. Zara pulled the sleeve of her jacket over her hand, concealing the ring. She'd tried removing it earlier, thinking it might be safer in her pocket, but it had inexplicably tightened on her finger, refusing to budge past her knuckle. The boarding process finally began, and Zara made her way onto the plane with Group 2. First class was a new experience for her, the spacious seats and attentive service a stark contrast to her usual economy travel. Marcus was already settled in his seat, the diary and his laptop secured in the bag at his feet. "Any trouble?" he asked quietly as she took the seat beside him. "Just the ring," Zara whispered. "It won't come off, and it keeps glowing." Marcus frowned. The diary mentioned something similar happening to Elizabeth once. The rings seemed to have some kind of awareness. They know when they're in danger of being separated from their chosen bearers. Chosen bearers? Zara repeated skeptically. It's a piece of jewelry, not Excalibur. A piece of jewelry that survived a fire that killed its owner, found its way through generations to you, and is currently emitting light without any power source, Marcus pointed out. I think we're past skepticism, don't you? Zara couldn't argue with that. She settled into her seat as the plane began its taxi toward the runway. You promised to tell me what else you found in the diary. Marcus nodded, keeping his voice low. There were several entries about the nature of the treasure itself. Elizabeth wrote that Richard and the consortium didn't just want wealth, they believed the ruins contained evidence of advanced technology, far beyond what should have existed in that era. What kind of technology? Zara asked. Elizabeth wasn't specific. Either she didn't know or didn't want to commit it to writing, but she mentioned that the indigenous people who guided Solomon and Jeremiah viewed the ruins as sacred and forbidden. They spoke of a power that could remake the world or unmake it entirely. That sounds ominously vague, Zara observed. Deliberately so, I think. But there was one concrete detail: the location. Marcus pulled out his phone and showed her a map application with coordinates already entered. These were hidden in a code within the diary's pages. It's a remote area in the Brazilian state of Amazonas. Zara studied the map, which showed dense jungle with no visible roads or settlements nearby. That's the middle of nowhere, which is probably why it's remained hidden all this time, Marcus agreed. But we're not heading there yet. First, we need to find Miguel's descendants in São Paulo and see if they still have Josephine's letter. And how exactly do we do that? São Paulo has over 12 million people. Actually, I already have an address, Marcus admitted, looking slightly abashed at Zara's surprised expression. While you were in the security line, I contacted a private investigator I've worked with before. He did a quick search based on the information in the diary. Is there anything you haven't thought of? Zara asked, not sure whether to be impressed or annoyed by his efficiency. Several things, like how to explain to my board why I missed the Hammond meeting, or what happens when they realize I've fled the country with company secrets. A shadow crossed his face. This isn't just an adventure for me, Zara. I'm risking everything. My company, my reputation, possibly my life. The raw honesty in his voice caught her off guard. Before she could respond, the plane accelerated down the runway and lifted into the night sky, leaving the glittering expanse of New York behind. Try to get some sleep, Marcus advised, reclining his seat. It's a long flight, and I have a feeling we won't get much rest once we land. Despite her racing thoughts, exhaustion soon pulled Zara into a deep sleep. Her dreams were vivid and strange. Images of ancient ruins, glowing emeralds, and two women running hand in hand through a dense forest, pursued by shadowy figures. When she awoke with a start several hours later, the plane was flying over the Caribbean, sunlight streaming through the windows. Marcus was already awake, his attention focused on Elizabeth's diary. He'd been making notes on his laptop, creating a timeline more detailed than their hotel version. "Good morning," he said, noticing her stirring. "Coffee?" He gestured to a steaming cup waiting in her seat's cup holder. "Thanks," Zara mumbled, still disoriented from her intense dreams. As she reached for the cup, she noticed her ring. The glow had intensified, the emerald now pulsing with light that was visible even in the bright cabin. "It's been doing that for the past hour," Marcus informed her, "getting stronger as we get closer to Brazil." Zara stared at the ring, mesmerized by its rhythmic pulsing. "It's like a heartbeat." "Or a beacon," Marcus suggested. "I've been thinking about what Elizabeth wrote, about the rings responding to each other. What if the second ring didn't melt in the fire? What if it's been in Brazil all this time?" The idea sent a thrill of possibility through Zara. "You think Josephine might have sent it to Miguel for safekeeping?" "It would make sense. After Elizabeth died, Josephine would have wanted to keep the rings separated and hidden, especially if she believed the consortium was still hunting her. Zara twisted the ring on her finger, finding that it now moved freely again. "This thing has a mind of its own." "More like a purpose," Marcus corrected. "The rings were created to work in tandem, to lead their bearers to the treasure. Maybe yours senses that we're on the right path." The remainder of the flight passed with Marcus explaining more of what he'd learned from the diary. Elizabeth had been convinced that the treasure, whatever it was, needed to remain hidden from the consortium. She'd written about Richard's growing obsession, how he'd changed from the charming man she'd married into someone consumed by greed and the promise of power. "The last entry is the most cryptic," Marcus said, turning to the final page. "It's dated the morning before the fire. Elizabeth writes, 'Should anything happen to me, Jay knows what must be done. The guardian waits where the river meets the stone mouth. Only those with pure intent may pass its test.'" "The guardian," Zara repeated. "That sounds mythological?" "Yes," Marcus agreed. "But at this point I'm willing to consider that this is more than just a treasure hunt. These rings, whatever they lead to, it's something people have killed for, died for." The plane began its descent into São Paulo, the sprawling metropolis stretching to the horizon in all directions. As they prepared for landing, Zara noticed Marcus growing tense, his eyes scanning the other passengers with renewed vigilance. "What is it?" she asked quietly. "Hammond has global connections," he explained. "We should assume they've flagged our passports by now. We need to move quickly once we land." Zara felt fear creeping back. "What if they're waiting for us?" "Then we improvise," Marcus said simply. "Stay close to me, and if anything happens, follow my lead." The landing was smooth, but Zara's anxiety mounted as they approached immigration. To her surprise, they passed through with no issues, their passports stamped without a second glance from the officials. "That was suspiciously easy," she murmured as they headed toward baggage claim. "Too easy," Marcus agreed, his posture alert despite his casual appearance. "They either don't know we're here yet, or they're letting us in so they can follow us," Zara finished his thought. They had packed light, just carry-ons, so they bypassed baggage claim and headed directly for the exit. Outside, the humid São Paulo air hit them like a wall after the air-conditioned terminal. "Our contact should be waiting," Marcus said, scanning the crowd of drivers holding signs. "There, Miguel Santana." A middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair held a simple sign with that name. He nodded slightly when he caught Marcus's eye, then turned and began walking toward the parking area without waiting for them. "Is that safe?" Zara asked as they followed at a distance. "Safer than standing around talking," Marcus replied. "The investigator assured me this driver is trustworthy and discreet." They followed the man to a nondescript sedan in the short-term parking lot. Once inside, he finally spoke, his English heavily accented. "Senor Blackwood, Senorita Johnson," he greeted them. "I am Carlos. Ricardo sends his regards and asks that I deliver you safely to your destination." "Thank you, Carlos," Marcus replied. "Has the appointment been arranged?" Carlos nodded. "The Santana family is expecting you this afternoon. I will take you to your hotel first to refresh, yes?" As they pulled away from the airport, Zara couldn't shake the feeling they were being watched. A quick glance in the side mirror confirmed her suspicion. A black SUV had pulled out behind them, maintaining a consistent distance. "Marcus," she said softly, nodding toward the mirror. He checked his own mirror and his jaw tightened. "Carlos, I think we have company." The driver's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. "I see them. Not to worry." Without further explanation, he suddenly accelerated and made a sharp right turn onto a smaller street, then another rapid left. The SUV attempted to follow but was cut off by a delivery truck. Carlos continued his evasive driving, weaving through São Paulo's congested streets with the confidence of someone intimately familiar with the city's layout. After several minutes of this, he finally spoke again. "They are gone, for now." How did they find us so quickly? Zara wondered aloud, her heart still racing from the chase. The Hammonds have resources everywhere, Marcus said grimly, and we're not exactly being subtle with that. He pointed to her ring, which was now glowing so brightly that it cast green shadows across the car's interior. Zara tried again to remove it, but the ring remained stubbornly fixed. It's like it's excited, she observed, like it knows we're getting closer to something. Carlos glanced at the ring in his rearview mirror, his expression unreadable. The emerald key, he said quietly. My grandfather told stories of such a ring. A gift from the gods, he called it. Zara and Marcus exchanged startled looks. Your grandfather knew about the ring? Marcus asked. Carlos nodded. Many old families in Brazil know the legends of the lost city and its treasures. Few believe them anymore. He met Zara's eyes in the mirror. But when I see that light coming from your hand, señorita, I think perhaps my grandfather was not telling stories after all. As they drove deeper into the heart of São Paulo, the ring's pulsing light grew more intense, more urgent. Whatever, or whoever, it was leading them to, they were getting closer with every passing moment. The Santana family residence stood in stark contrast to the modern high-rises that dominated much of São Paulo. Nestled in the historic neighborhood of Bela Vista, the colonial-style home with its terracotta roof and vibrant blue trim looked like it belonged to another era. Lush greenery surrounded the property, providing a natural barrier against the city's chaos. Carlos dropped them off with a promise to return in 3 hours. Be careful, he advised as they exited the car. The Santanas are respected, but they keep many secrets. The iron gate opened before they could ring the bell, revealing an elderly woman with sharp eyes and silver hair pulled into a tight bun. She wore a simple linen dress, but the gold necklace at her throat and the dignified way she carried herself suggested someone accustomed to authority. Beatriz Santana, she introduced herself in perfect English, extending a weathered hand. You are late. We expected you yesterday. Marcus and Zara exchanged confused glances. Yesterday? Marcus repeated. How could you have expected us when we only decided to come to Brazil last night? Beatriz's mouth curved into a knowing smile. The ring told us. She gestured to Zara's hand, where the emerald continued to pulse with vivid green light. It has been calling to its brother for days now. Come, we have much to discuss. They followed her through a courtyard filled with potted orchids and into a home that felt like a museum. Antique furniture, indigenous artifacts, and family portraits spanning generations filled every room. Beatrice led them to a sun-drenched study where a man who appeared to be in his 70s waited, seated in a wheelchair by the window. My son, Paulo, Beatrice introduced him, the last direct descendant of Miguel Santana. Paulo nodded in greeting, his eyes immediately fixing on Zara's ring. So it's true, he said softly. The Northern Key has returned to Brazil. Zara felt a strange sensation, as if the ring was warming on her finger, responding to Paulo's recognition. We're looking for information about my grandmother, Josephine Johnson. We believe she sent a letter to your grandfather in 1953. Not just a letter, Paulo replied, wheeling himself to an antique desk. He unlocked a drawer with a key he wore around his neck. An echo of Walter Green's protective gesture that sent a chill down Zara's spine. Josephine entrusted my grandfather with this. From the drawer, Paulo removed a small wooden box carved with intricate symbols similar to those on Zara's ring. The moment the box appeared, her ring's glow intensified dramatically, bathing the room in emerald light. It recognizes its counterpart, Beatrice observed, as if confirming a long-held theory. Paulo carefully opened the box, revealing a velvet interior housing what appeared to be fragments of metal and stone, melted, twisted, but still recognizable as having once been a ring identical to Zara's. Elizabeth's ring, Marcus breathed, moving closer. It didn't survive the fire intact. Not intact, no, Paolo agreed, but not completely destroyed either. Josephine recovered these pieces from the ashes before fleeing. As Zara approached the box, her ring seemed to pull her forward, like a magnet drawn to its opposite pole. When her hand hovered over the fragments, the emerald in her ring shot out a beam of light so intense she had to shield her eyes. The fragments in the box began to tremble, then rise slightly, suspended in the emerald glow. "What's happening?" Zara gasped, unable to pull her hand away as the light enveloped both her ring and the fragments. "They are trying to become whole again," Beatrice explained calmly, as if witnessing a miracle was a routine occurrence in her home. The keys were created as a pair. One cannot fulfill its purpose without the other. The light suddenly collapsed inward with a sound like a thunderclap, forcing everyone to step back. When they looked again, the fragments in the box had rearranged themselves, forming a more coherent shape. Still broken, but now clearly identifiable as a ring matching Zara's in design. "Incredible," Marcus murmured, staring at the partially reconstructed ring. "It's like it's healing itself." "Not healing," Paolo corrected. "Remembering." The rings were crafted with materials that modern science cannot fully explain. They contain memory of their original form, their purpose, and their bearers. "That's impossible," Zara protested, though the evidence literally glowed before her eyes. "Many things once thought impossible have been proven otherwise," Beatrice said philosophically. "Your grandmother understood this. She knew the rings were more than mere objects." Paolo wheeled himself to a bookshelf and retrieved a yellowed envelope. Her letter to my grandfather, preserved exactly as it arrived in 1953. "You should read it yourselves." Marcus carefully opened the delicate envelope and unfolded the letter within. He began reading aloud, Josephine's words bringing her voice across the decades. "Dearest Miguel, if you are reading this, I have successfully escaped the United States and the men who took my Elizabeth from me. With this letter, I entrust you with what remains of her ring, the second emerald key that has cost so many lives already. Elizabeth discovered the truth about the ruins and what lies beneath them. The consortium doesn't seek mere treasure or historical artifacts. They hunt what the indigenous guardians called the breath of creation. Elizabeth believed it to be some kind of power source, technology far beyond our current understanding, something that could revolutionize energy production or be weaponized with devastating consequences. The coordinates to the site are encoded within the rings themselves, visible only when they are united under the proper conditions. Elizabeth and I witnessed this phenomenon once, and what we saw frightened us deeply. This is not knowledge meant for those driven by greed or hunger for power. I cannot destroy my ring. We tried, and it resisted all attempts. So I will keep it hidden, changing my name and living quietly. Elizabeth's ring, damaged as it is, I leave in your safe keeping. The consortium believes it was destroyed in the fire. Let them continue to believe this. If a time comes when the rings must be reunited, they will find a way. They have a will of their own, a purpose we can only partly comprehend. Trust them to choose their bearers wisely. With eternal gratitude and love, Josephine. Silence fell over the room as Marcus finished reading. Zara stared at the letter, hearing her grandmother's voice in the words, imagining her writing them while grieving Elizabeth and fearing for her life. "She never told me any of this," Zara said softly. "Not a word about Elizabeth, about the ring's true nature, about any of it." "She was protecting you," Beatrice said gently. "The consortium has operated in shadows for generations, eliminating anyone who threatened their search. Only in recent years, with the deaths of the original members, has their influence waned." Marcus paced the room, processing the new information. "Josephine mentions coordinates encoded in the rings. Do you know how to access them?" Paolo and Beatrice exchanged glances before Paolo answered. "The full activation requires both rings under specific conditions. According to family lore, it must be done at the convergence of moonlight and moving water, where the jungle river passes through the stone arch. The guardian waits where the river meets the stone mouth, Marcus quoted from Elizabeth's diary. That must be the place. Yes, Paulo confirmed. A natural stone formation in the Amazon, about 2 days' journey from here. The indigenous people consider it sacred ground, the gateway to the ancient city. You know where it is? Zara asked, excitement building despite her lingering skepticism. My grandfather took me there once when I was a boy, Paulo said, his eyes distant with memory. Before my accident, it was otherworldly. The stone arch stands over 30 feet tall, carved with symbols like those on the rings. The river passes directly beneath it, flowing into a network of caves that my grandfather said lead to the lost city. Can you take us there? Marcus asked. Paulo shook his head regretfully. My condition prevents such journeys now. But I can provide maps, guides, everything you need to find it. Why would you help us? Zara questioned, suddenly suspicious. You don't even know us. We've been waiting for you, Beatrice said simply. For decades, we've safeguarded what remains of Elizabeth's ring, knowing that someday the northern key would return to complete what was started nearly 2 centuries ago. And what exactly was started? Marcus pressed. What is this breath of creation that Josephine mentioned? Paulo wheeled himself to a cabinet and withdrew an ancient-looking clay tablet covered in unfamiliar symbols. According to the indigenous legends, the ancients discovered a power source within the earth, something they called the breath of the world. It provided unlimited energy, allowed them to build magnificent cities, and advanced their civilization beyond anything seen before. But something went wrong, Beatrice continued, her voice dropping. They grew arrogant, began to harness the power for weapons, for control. The earth itself rebelled. Earthquakes, floods, disasters untold. The surviving elders made a decision to hide the power source deep within the sacred mountain, accessible only through a series of trials designed to test the worthiness of those who sought it. And the rings? Zara asked, glancing at her still glowing emerald. Created as keys, Paulo explained, but also as judges. They respond only to those with the proper intent. If the wrong person tries to use them, the legends say the consequences are severe. A chill ran through Zara. You think these rings can judge moral character? Not exactly, Paulo said. They respond to connection, to the bond between their bearers. The ancient texts speak of 2 hearts united in purpose. The keys work only for those who approach the trials together, with shared intent. Zara and Marcus exchanged uncomfortable glances. They were barely acquaintances thrown together by circumstance, not partners united in purpose. There's more, Beatrice said, noting their discomfort. The consortium isn't the only group searching for the ancient power. Others have sought it throughout history, some for noble reasons, others for personal gain. None have succeeded in passing the trials. Because they lacked the rings, Marcus guessed. Some had 1 ring, a few even managed to obtain both temporarily, Paulo corrected. But the rings rejected them. The keys must choose their bearers, like they've chosen you. Zara shook her head. They haven't chosen us. My grandmother gave me this ring because I'm family, and Elizabeth's ring is broken. Yet your ring called to its brother the moment you 2 met, Beatrice observed. And now the fragments reconstruct themselves in your presence. The rings have awakened after decades of dormancy. That is not coincidence. Before either could respond, Paulo's phone chimed with an alert. He checked it, his expression darkening instantly. "Security breach," he announced. "Someone has entered the grounds." Beatrice moved with surprising speed for her age, crossing to a window and peering out through the slats of a wooden blind. 3 men, armed. The same ones who followed you from the airport, I'd wager. "How did they find us?" Zara whispered, panic rising. "The ring's energy signature," Paulo said grimly. "When it activated fully in proximity to the fragments, it released a pulse that can be detected with the right equipment." The consortium has been developing technology to track the rings for decades, Beatrice added, already moving toward a bookshelf. She pulled a specific volume, and with a soft click, the shelf swung outward, revealing a hidden passage. Quickly this way. The tunnel leads to a garage 2 blocks away. Carlos is already there waiting. Paolo hastily gathered the fragments of Elizabeth's ring, returning them to their box, which he thrust into Marcus's hands. Take this. The rings must be united at the stone arch. It's the only way to access the trials. What about the letter, the maps? Marcus asked urgently. No time, Paolo insisted, wheeling to a desk and scribbling an address on a piece of paper. Go to this location in Manaus. Ask for Mateo Ribeiro. He was my guide when I visited the arch. He will help you. The sound of breaking glass echoed from somewhere in the house. Beatrice ushered them toward the passage. Go! We will delay them. We can't just leave you to face armed men, Zara protested. Beatrice smiled with fierce confidence. This is not the first time the Santana family has protected the rings. We know what we're doing. Now go, fulfill the destiny the rings have chosen for you. As Marcus pulled her into the dark passage, the last thing Zara saw was Paolo closing a hidden compartment in his wheelchair, revealing what looked distinctly like a handgun. Then the bookshelf swung closed behind them, sealing them in darkness broken only by the pulsing green light of her ring. The secret passage was narrow and damp, forcing Zara and Marcus to move in single file through near darkness. Zara led the way, her ring providing the only illumination as they navigated the claustrophobic tunnel. The distant sounds of shouting and what might have been gunshots echoed behind them, spurring them forward. I can't believe we just left them, Zara said, her voice tight with guilt. They knew what they were doing, Marcus replied from behind her, and they were prepared. Did you see Paolo's wheelchair compartment? I saw, Zara confirmed grimly. But 3 armed men against an elderly woman and a man in a wheelchair? A woman and man who have been guarding ancient secrets for decades, Marcus reminded her. I suspect the Santanas have more defenses than we saw. The passage finally ended at a metal door. Zara pushed it open cautiously, revealing a small, dimly lit garage containing a single vehicle, a rugged-looking SUV with mud-splattered sides and tinted windows. Carlos stood beside it, looking relieved at their appearance. Quickly, he urged, opening the rear doors. We must reach the airport before they regroup. Airport? Zara questioned as they climbed in. We're not going to Manaus? By road would take days, Carlos explained, starting the engine, and they would catch us before we left the city. No, we fly to Manaus, then take the river. As they pulled out of the garage onto a quiet side street, Zara craned her neck, trying to see back toward the Santana residence. There was no visible commotion, no sign of the violence they'd heard, just a peaceful colonial home in the afternoon sun. Do you think they're okay? She asked softly. Marcus followed her gaze. I hope so. Carlos drove with the practiced ease of someone accustomed to evasive maneuvers, taking a circuitous route through São Paulo's congested streets. Senor Paolo called me while you were in the passage, he informed them. He said to tell you they are fine and that the intruders have been dealt with. Dealt with? Marcus repeated. What does that mean? Carlos merely shrugged. The Santana family has protected the secret of the rings for generations. They do not survive by being unprepared. They drove in tense silence for several minutes before Zara spoke again. How are you involved in all this, Carlos? You seem to know a lot about the rings. A faint smile crossed the driver's weathered face. My grandfather was Miguel Santana's closest friend. Our families have been allied for generations. I grew up hearing the legends, learning the secret routes, preparing for the day when the Northern Key would return. You make it sound like destiny, Zara said, unable to keep the skepticism from her voice. Perhaps it is, Carlos replied simply, or perhaps it is merely probability that eventually the right people would bring the rings together at the right time. And you think we're the right people? Marcus asked. Carlos met his eyes in the rearview mirror. The rings seem to think so. They are particular about their bearers. Zara looked down at her hand, where the emerald had settled into a steady glow rather than the pulsing light of before. Beside her, Marcus held the wooden box containing the fragments of Elizabeth's ring. She wondered what made them right when so many others had apparently been rejected by the mysterious artifacts. At the airport, Carlos led them to a private terminal where a small twin-engine plane waited on the tarmac. "Courtesy of the Santana family," he explained. "The pilot is trustworthy. He will take you directly to Manaus." "You're not coming with us?" Zara asked, surprised. Carlos shook his head. "My duty was to deliver you safely to the Santanas and then to this plane. From here, your path is your own." He handed Marcus an envelope. "Documentation, emergency contacts, and funds. Mateo will be expecting you." After a brief farewell, they boarded the small aircraft. As it taxied down the runway, Zara caught a glimpse of Carlos standing at the edge of the tarmac, watching them with an expression that looked almost like reverence. "Everyone seems to think we're on some grand, predestined mission," she muttered as they took off, "when really we're just running for our lives and following a trail of breadcrumbs." Marcus looked thoughtful, turning the wooden box over in his hands. "Maybe that's how destiny works. It doesn't announce itself with trumpets and clear instructions. It just unfolds, one decision at a time, until you look back and realize you were on a path all along." "That's surprisingly philosophical for a corporate CEO," Zara observed. A hint of a smile crossed his face. "I contain multitudes." The flight to Manaus took just under 4 hours. They spent much of it examining the contents of the envelope Carlos had provided, which included detailed maps of the Amazon region, several thick stacks of Brazilian currency, and credentials identifying them as environmental researchers. "Clever cover," Marcus noted. "Gives us a reason to be heading into remote areas without raising suspicion." As the plane began its descent, Zara gazed out the window at the sprawling city nestled at the confluence of the Negro and Amazon rivers, surrounded by dense rainforest stretching to the horizon in every direction. The enormity of their undertaking suddenly hit her. "We're really doing this," she said quietly, "chasing after some ancient power source in the middle of the Amazon based on glowing rings and centuries-old legends." "Having second thoughts?" Marcus asked. Zara turned to him. "Aren't you? You've abandoned your company, fled the country, and are now headed into the jungle with a woman you barely know, pursued by people who want to kill us. All for what? Something that might not even exist?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. 24 hours ago, I would have said you were right to question all this. But after what we've seen, the way your ring reacted to the fragments, the Santana's knowledge, the lengths the consortium has gone to for decades." He shook his head. "Something extraordinary is waiting for us. I can feel it." The plane touched down at a small airstrip on the outskirts of Manaus rather than the main airport, another precaution arranged by the Santanas. A weather-beaten jeep was waiting, keys under the mat as promised. "The address Paulo gave us," Marcus said, consulting the paper as they climbed into the vehicle. "It's in the old harbor district." They drove through the bustling city, a peculiar mix of modern buildings and colonial architecture, all surrounded by the omnipresent green of the rainforest. Mateo Ribeiro's address turned out to be a weathered storefront with faded lettering identifying it as Ribeiro Expeditions. The interior was cluttered with maps, equipment, and what appeared to be artifacts from various jungle expeditions. A ceiling fan spun lazily overhead, doing little to dispel the humid air. Behind a counter strewn with papers stood a lean, sun-darkened man with intelligent eyes and silver-streaked black hair. "You must be the friends of Paulo." He greeted them in accented English before they could even introduce themselves. "He called an hour ago, said you would need transport upriver." "You're Mateo?" Marcus confirmed. The man nodded once. "For almost 40 years I have guided those who seek the old places." but few seek the stone arch. His eyes drifted to Zara's hand, where the ring had begun to pulse again. "Ah, you bring one of the keys. That explains much." "We have both, actually," Zara told him, sensing no reason to dissemble with someone the Santanas trusted. Mateo's eyebrows rose. "Both? That has not happened in my lifetime." He studied them with newfound intensity. "Show me." Zara held out her hand while Marcus carefully opened the wooden box, revealing the partially reconstructed fragments of Elizabeth's ring. Mateo leaned close, examining both with expert eyes. "The southern key is damaged," he observed. "But perhaps not beyond hope. At the arch, with the right conditions—" He straightened. Decision made. "We leave at dawn. The journey takes 2 days by boat, then another on foot. Bring only what you can carry yourself." "Is it safe to wait until morning?" Zara asked anxiously. "We're being followed." "The night belongs to jaguars and river spirits," Mateo said firmly. "Only fools enter the jungle after dark. Better to face men than what waits in the shadows." Despite his cryptic warning, he was practical about their immediate safety. "You will stay in my home tonight. It has protections. Those who hunt you will not find you there." As evening fell, they followed Mateo through winding back streets to a modest house perched on stilts near the river. Inside, it was unexpectedly well appointed, with modern amenities alongside tribal masks and what appeared to be archaeological specimens. "You are not just a guide," Marcus observed as Mateo prepared a simple but hearty meal. "I am many things," the older man replied. "Guide, yes. Also botanist, archaeologist, unofficial of course, and keeper of old knowledge." He set bowls of fragrant fish stew before them. "My grandmother was indigenous Guarani. She taught me the stories of the ancient ones and their great city." As they ate, Mateo shared legends of the lost civilization, a people whose technology had surpassed even modern understanding, who had harnessed the Earth's energy without pollution or waste, creating a society of abundance and learning. "But power corrupts," he said, echoing what they'd heard from the Santanas. "They began to use their technology for domination, for weapons. The Guardians, those who had been entrusted with protecting the knowledge, made a difficult choice. They sealed away the source of their power, hid their greatest city, and scattered." "And the rings?" Zara prompted. "Created from materials found only at the power source itself," Mateo explained. "Designed to respond only to those judged worthy of the knowledge. The trials at the arch test this worthiness." "What kind of trials?" Marcus asked. Mateo's expression grew solemn. "Those who have attempted them and returned speak of 3. The trial of the mind, the trial of the body, and the trial of the spirit. Few pass even the first." After dinner, Mateo showed them to a small guest room with 2 narrow beds. "Rest," he advised. "The journey ahead will test your endurance." Left alone, Zara and Marcus stood awkwardly in the confined space, their newfound proximity suddenly uncomfortable. "I can sleep on the floor," Marcus offered. "Don't be ridiculous," Zara replied. "We're adults. We can share a room with separate beds without it being weird." As she changed in the tiny adjoining bathroom, Zara caught her reflection in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Her hair was wild, her eyes intense, her expression hardened by the events of the past 2 days. She looked like someone else, someone braver perhaps, or simply someone with nothing left to lose. When she emerged, Marcus was standing by the window, gazing out at the river. The wooden box containing Elizabeth's ring fragments sat open on his bed, the pieces glowing faintly in resonance with Zara's ring. "Do you ever wonder," he said without turning, "if we're puppets in some cosmic game? Dancing to the tune of these rings?" Zara approached, standing beside him at the window. "I prefer to think we have choices, that whatever force connects these rings to us, it doesn't control us." And yet here we are, Marcus countered softly, following a path that seems to have been laid out long before we were born. In the darkness of the Amazon night, with the river flowing like liquid silver under the moon, Zara felt a strange sense of peace despite everything. If these rings really can judge worthiness, she said, maybe they chose us because we would make the right choices when the time came, not because we're special, but because we're, I don't know, stubborn enough not to give up? Marcus turned to her, his expression softening in the dim light. Stubborn enough to defy a powerful consortium, flee the country and chase ancient legends into the Amazon? Yes, I'd say that describes us both. For the first time since their chaotic journey began, they shared a genuine smile, two strangers bound by extraordinary circumstances, standing at the edge of a mystery that had shaped both their families for generations. Dawn broke over the Amazon with spectacular hues of orange and pink reflecting on the river's surface. Mateo's boat, a sturdy craft with a covered central cabin and powerful outboard motors, was loaded and ready by the time the first rays of sunlight pierced the morning mist. They departed without ceremony, slipping away from Manaus as the city was still rubbing sleep from its eyes. "Stay below until we clear the harbor," Mateo instructed, gesturing to the cabin. "Too many eyes in Manaus, too many people willing to sell information." Zara and Marcus complied, ducking into the surprisingly comfortable space equipped with basic amenities, a small cooking area, storage compartments, and padded benches that could serve as beds. Through the windows they watched as Manaus receded behind them, and the vast expanse of the Amazon opened up ahead. Once they were safely beyond the city's reach, Mateo invited them to join him at the helm. "The rings?" he said without preamble. "Show me how they respond to each other now." Zara removed her ring, finding it came off easily this time, and Marcus opened the wooden box containing Elizabeth's fragments. When Zara held her intact ring near the broken pieces, both began to glow intensely and the fragments rose slightly, drawn toward the complete ring like metal filings to a magnet. "Extraordinary," Mateo murmured. "The southern key recognizes its counterpart and seeks to be whole again. This is a good sign." "Can it be repaired?" Marcus asked. Mateo's weathered face creased in thought. "Not by conventional means, but at the arch, where the energy flows strongest? Perhaps." He gestured for Zara to return her ring to her finger. "For now, keep them separated. Their combined energy can be detected by those who know what to look for." As the boat cut through the water, the landscape transformed around them. The semi-developed outskirts of Manaus gave way to pristine rainforest that crowded right to the river's edge, an impenetrable wall of green teeming with life. Occasionally they passed small settlements or isolated dwellings perched on stilts along the riverbank, but these grew fewer as they journeyed deeper into the wilderness. Mateo proved to be not just a skilled navigator but also a knowledgeable guide, pointing out rare birds, explaining the complex ecosystem of the rainforest, and sharing stories passed down through generations of his family. His deep connection to this place was evident in every word. "The river is the lifeblood," he told them as they paused midday to eat. "It gives, it takes away, it transforms. The ancients understood this better than we do. They built their civilization in harmony with these forces, not in opposition to them." "Yet they still fell," Marcus observed. "All civilizations fall eventually," Mateo replied with philosophical calm. "The question is what they leave behind, wisdom or ruin." By late afternoon, Mateo guided the boat into a narrow tributary, where the overhanging vegetation created a green tunnel that blocked much of the sunlight. The air grew heavy with moisture and the sounds of the forest intensified, birds calling, insects buzzing, and occasionally the distinct splash of something large entering the water nearby. "Caiman," Mateo explained when Zara jumped at a particularly loud splash. "They are curious but generally harmless unless provoked." "Generally harmless," Zara repeated dryly. "That's so reassuring." As evening approached, Matteo steered toward a small clearing on the riverbank. "We stop here for the night," he announced. "It is not safe to navigate these waters after dark." They secured the boat and set up a simple camp. Matteo built a fire and prepared a meal of river fish and wild rice, which they ate as darkness fell completely, transforming the rainforest into a symphony of nocturnal sounds. "I've been thinking about what Paolo said," Marcus remarked as they sat around the fire. "About the rings choosing their bearers. What makes someone worthy in their eyes? It can't be moral perfection. None of us qualifies for that. The old stories say it is not about perfection but balance," Matteo replied. "The bearers must complement each other. Different strengths, different perspectives, but aligned in purpose." Zara glanced at Marcus across the fire, the flames casting flickering shadows across his face. He looked different here in the wilderness, away from the trappings of his corporate identity, more authentic somehow, more alive. "And what is our purpose supposed to be?" she asked. "What are we meant to do if we actually find this power source?" "That," said Matteo, "is what the trials will reveal. The purpose chooses you as much as you choose it." With that enigmatic statement, he rose and announced he was turning in for the night, leaving Zara and Marcus alone by the fire. A comfortable silence settled between them, a stark contrast to the awkward tension of their first night together at the hotel. It felt like weeks had passed rather than days, their shared experiences forging a connection neither had anticipated. "I keep thinking about my grandmother," Zara said eventually. "How she lived her whole life with this secret, this burden. Watching over the ring, always looking over her shoulder, never knowing when the consortium might find her." "She must have been an extraordinary woman," Marcus replied, "to survive what she did, to protect you from it all." "She was," Zara agreed, smiling at memories. "Strong, practical, but also incredibly loving. She raised me after my parents died, never complained once about having a child thrust upon her in her 60s. Her smile faded. "I just wish she'd trusted me with the truth." "Would you have believed her?" Marcus asked gently. "If she'd told you about ancient powers and secret conspiracies?" Zara sighed. "Probably not. I'd have worried she was becoming senile." "Some truths can only be shown, not told," Marcus observed. Maybe she knew that. The conversation drifted to their lives before. Zara's small business built from nothing. Marcus's complex relationship with his family legacy and the company that bore their name. They discovered unexpected commonalities. Both were essentially loners, both driven by a need to prove themselves, both uncomfortable with accepting help. "Maybe that's why the rings chose us," Zara suggested with a self-deprecating laugh. "Two stubborn people who don't know when to quit." "I'll take that over two people destined for greatness any day," Marcus replied, smiling. As the fire died down to embers, they retreated to the boat to sleep, the events of the day catching up with them. Zara drifted off to the gentle rocking of the boat and the night sounds of the Amazon, her dreams filled with glowing emeralds and ancient cities. She awoke suddenly in the pre-dawn darkness, a hand over her mouth. Matteo's voice whispered urgently in her ear, "Silence, we have company." Heart racing, she nodded her understanding and he removed his hand. Marcus was already awake, his body tense with alertness. Matteo gestured for them to follow him to the cabin windows. Through the glass, barely visible in the dim light, Zara could make out another boat moving slowly upriver, its motors cut to reduce noise. "Consortium?" Marcus mouthed. Matteo nodded grimly. "Hammond's men, yes. They must have tracked us to Manaus, followed our trail." "How far to the arch?" Zara whispered. "Another full day on water, then half a day on foot," Matteo replied. "We must leave now, before they spot us." They packed up camp with near-silent efficiency and slipped away under the cover of darkness, Matteo navigating by some sixth sense that allowed him to find the channel without lights. As pale dawn began to illuminate the river, they were already miles ahead of their pursuers. Throughout the second day, Matteo pushed the boat hard, taking smaller tributaries and hidden channels that someone without his intimate knowledge of the river would never find. The landscape grew increasingly primeval, the trees taller, the undergrowth denser, the wildlife more abundant and less disturbed by human presence. "We are entering protected lands," Matteo explained, "and beyond that, territories that even the government does not fully control. The indigenous tribes here maintain their sovereignty." By mid-afternoon, the river narrowed significantly, forcing them to proceed more cautiously. Matteo cut the engine frequently, listening intently before continuing. "They are still behind us," he said after one such pause, "but they struggle to follow our path." "Can we lose them entirely?" Marcus asked. Matteo's expression was doubtful. "In the water, perhaps not, but soon we leave the river. On foot, in the jungle, with the tribes watching, that is different territory." As the day waned, they reached a small, well-hidden cove where several dugout canoes were pulled up on the muddy bank. A young indigenous man appeared silently from the forest, exchanging rapid words with Matteo in a language neither Zara nor Marcus understood. "This is Tupa," Matteo introduced him. "He is my sister's grandson and will help guide us from here. The boat cannot go farther. The river becomes too shallow and the fallen trees too numerous." They transferred essential supplies to backpacks, while Tupa concealed their boat under a canopy of cut branches, making it virtually invisible from the river. As they prepared to head into the jungle, Zara noticed her ring was glowing steadily now, no longer pulsing but emanating a constant emerald light. "We are getting close," Matteo confirmed, seeing her examine it. The ring senses the proximity of the arch. The fragments in the wooden box Marcus carried had also changed, appearing more defined, less melted, as if proximity to their destination was accelerating their reconstruction. Guided by Tupa, they hiked for several hours through dense undergrowth, following no visible path that Zara could discern. Yet their guides moved with absolute confidence, never hesitating at forks or obstacles. Occasionally, Tupa would stop and listen, then make subtle adjustments to their route. "He is ensuring we are not followed," Matteo explained, "and avoiding the territories of tribes that are not friendly to outsiders." As twilight descended, they made camp in a small clearing. Unlike their riverside stop, this time they built no fire. "Too risky," Matteo advised. "We eat cold rations tonight." They ate in the growing darkness, speaking in whispers despite being miles from the river and their pursuers. The rainforest at night was both beautiful and intimidating, alive with sounds and movements just beyond the reach of their vision. "Tomorrow we reach the arch," Matteo told them. "By midday, if we move quickly." "And the trials?" Marcus asked. "What should we expect?" Matteo's expression grew solemn in the dim light of their single small lamp. "No one can prepare you fully. Each person's trials are unique, drawn from their own minds and hearts. But know this: you will be tested to your limits, individually and together." "What happens if we fail?" Zara asked, voicing the question that had been nagging at her. "Those who fail and survive are forever changed," Matteo said quietly, "marked by the experience. Some lose their minds. Others lose their way, spending the rest of their lives searching for a second chance that never comes." "And if we succeed?" Marcus pressed. Matteo looked between them, his eyes reflecting the lamp's glow. "Then you will face a choice greater than any you have faced before. The power source is not merely a treasure to be claimed or a technology to be harnessed. It is a responsibility that has broken stronger souls than yours." A heavy silence fell over their camp. In the distance, something large crashed through the undergrowth, reminding them of the wilderness surrounding them. Yet Zara realized that, strangely, she felt more afraid of what awaited them at the arch than of the tangible dangers of the Amazon. "We should rest," Matteo finally said. "Tomorrow will demand everything from you." As they settled into their simple bedrolls, Zara found herself positioned close to Marcus, their shoulders nearly touching in the confined space of the small tent. Without thinking, she reached out and took his hand in the darkness. "Whatever happens tomorrow," she whispered, "I'm glad it's you who's here with me. I don't think I could do this alone." Marcus's fingers tightened around hers. "You're not alone," he replied softly. "Not anymore." In that moment, with the vast Amazon rainforest surrounding them and an ancient mystery waiting ahead, something shifted between them, a recognition that transcended their differences and disparate lives. Whatever bond the rings had sensed or created between them, it had grown into something real and undeniable. Tomorrow would test that bond to its breaking point. They awoke before dawn, roused by Tupa's gentle but insistent hand on their shoulders. No words were spoken as they packed up camp and consumed a hasty breakfast of dried fruit and nuts. The jungle was shrouded in mist, lending an otherworldly quality to the massive trees and tangled vines surrounding them. As they resumed their trek, Zara noticed her ring was now emitting a light so bright she could no longer conceal it. It illuminated their path like a spectral flashlight, casting everything in an emerald glow. "The ring knows we are close," Matteo observed. "It is awakening fully." The fragments in Marcus's wooden box had become so active that he could barely keep the lid closed. It rattled and shook with the pieces straining toward Zara's ring as if magnetized. By mid-morning, the density of the jungle began to change. The vegetation thinned slightly, and Zara noticed strange formations in the underbrush, remnants of worked stone partially reclaimed by nature, geometrically precise angles that could not have formed naturally. "The outer perimeter," Matteo explained, gesturing to the ruins. "This was once a ceremonial pathway leading to the arch. The ancient city lies beyond, hidden beneath centuries of growth." As they continued, more evidence of the lost civilization emerged. Eroded statues, crumbling columns, intricate carvings obscured by moss and lichen. The architecture was unlike anything Zara had seen before, neither fully matching any known ancient culture, yet somehow incorporating elements that seemed vaguely familiar. "It's not just one civilization," Marcus realized aloud, studying a particularly well-preserved glyph. "These symbols, some are reminiscent of Mayan, others of ancient Sanskrit, still others I can't place at all. The ancients traveled far beyond what our history books acknowledge," Matteo confirmed. "They shared knowledge across continents, across cultures. What was lost here was the culmination of humanity's collective wisdom." They fell silent as the path opened into a natural clearing. There, spanning a rushing river, stood the stone arch, a massive structure at least 30 feet tall, its surface covered in the same intricate symbols they had seen on the rings. The emerald at its apex seemed to pulse with inner light in response to Zara's ring, which now blazed so brightly it was almost painful to look at. "The Guardian," Matteo said with reverence, "the gateway to the trials." Zara couldn't tear her eyes from the arch. The river flowing beneath it was crystal clear, the water seeming to glow with the same emerald light as it passed through the stone gateway. Beyond the arch, the jungle closed in again, denser than before, offering no hint of what lay within. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Before Matteo could answer, a harsh shout came from behind them. Spinning around, they saw a group of men emerging from the jungle, 5 of them, armed with modern weapons that looked obscenely out of place in this ancient setting. At their head was a man Zara recognized from news photographs, Edward Hammond, son of the recently deceased Victor. "Ms. Johnson, Mr. Blackwood," he called out, his tone falsely cordial. "Thank you for leading us to our destination. I apologize for the rough treatment in New York, but my men can be overzealous." Tupa had melted into the jungle at the first sign of intruders, but Matteo stood his ground beside Zara and Marcus, his face impassive. The consortium has sought this place for generations, Hammond continued, approaching with confident strides. My father dedicated his life to finding it, as did his father before him. And now, thanks to you, we've succeeded. You don't understand what you're dealing with, Marcus warned. This isn't just some technological discovery you can patent and exploit. Hammond laughed. Oh, I understand perfectly well. The breath of creation. Isn't that what your ancestors called it? An energy source so powerful it transformed an ancient civilization. Imagine what it could do in modern hands. His smile disappeared. Now, Ms. Johnson, the ring, if you please. And if I refuse? Zara challenged, though her heart hammered in her chest. Hammond sighed theatrically. Must we repeat the hotel scene? I have 5 armed men who will happily remove the ring along with your finger if necessary. The wooden box in Marcus's hands suddenly burst open, the fragments of Elizabeth's ring exploding outward with such force that everyone instinctively ducked. The pieces hovered in the air, glowing intensely, then shot toward Zara's ring with blinding speed. When the light faded, Zara found herself wearing not 1 ring but 2, her grandmother's intact on her left hand and Elizabeth's, now fully reconstructed, on her right. Both blazed with emerald fire. Impossible, Hammond breathed, momentarily stunned by the supernatural display. The rings have chosen, Matteo said quietly. The trials await. Before Hammond could recover, the ground began to tremble. The river beneath the arch surged, its waters rising impossibly upward to form a vertical sheet of liquid spanning the entire archway, a shimmering emerald curtain that rippled and flowed, yet remained contained within the stone framework. The gateway opens, Matteo explained urgently. You must go through now, before it closes. Shoot them, Hammond ordered, recovering his composure. As his men raised their weapons, Zara grabbed Marcus's hand. Together, she said, and they ran toward the arch. Gunshots cracked behind them, but before any bullets could find their mark, they plunged through the liquid curtain. Instead of the wet impact Zara expected, passing through the water felt like stepping through a wall of warm light. A sensation of weightlessness enveloped her, and for a moment she was aware only of Marcus's hand tightly gripping hers and the dual pulses of the rings on her fingers. They emerged into a world transformed. The jungle was gone, replaced by a vast, circular chamber carved from living stone. The walls rose hundreds of feet to a domed ceiling studded with glowing crystals that illuminated the space with soft, diffuse light. In the center of the chamber stood 3 stone pedestals arranged in a triangle. The Hall of Trials, Marcus whispered, his voice reverberating in the cavernous space. A thunderous splash behind them announced Hammond's arrival. He stumbled through the water curtain alone, his men presumably unwilling or unable to follow, his face contorted with rage and wonder as he took in their surroundings. "This changes nothing," he snarled, drawing a pistol from beneath his jacket. "The power will be mine." Before he could level his weapon, a voice filled the chamber, neither male nor female, neither young nor old, but resonating with undeniable authority. "The trials do not accept violence," it intoned. "Those who seek power through force shall find only what they fear most." Hammond's expression shifted from anger to confusion to abject terror in the span of seconds. He began to scream, firing his weapon wildly at enemies only he could see, backing toward the water curtain until he stumbled through it and disappeared. "What happened to him?" Zara asked, shaken by the display. "The first test," Marcus realized. His intentions were impure. The voice returned, addressing them directly. "Bearers of the keys, you have been drawn here across time and space, guided by forces beyond your understanding. The power you seek has waited millennia for worthy guardians. Prove yourselves through the trials, and the choice will be yours." The pedestals in the center of the chamber began to glow, one red, one blue, one white. As if drawn by an invisible force, Zara and Marcus approached them. "The trial of mind," the voice announced as the red pedestal brightened. "To understand the power, you must first understand yourselves." The air around them shimmered, and suddenly they were no longer in the stone chamber. Zara found herself standing in her grandmother's kitchen, Josephine alive and vibrant before her, holding out the ring. "Why did you keep the truth from me?" Zara heard herself ask. "Because truth without wisdom is dangerous," her grandmother replied. "What would you have done with this knowledge at 18? At 25? Would you have been ready for the responsibility?" The scene shifted, and Zara witnessed moments from her own life, choices made, paths taken and not taken, all contributing to who she had become. She saw her fears, her doubts, but also her courage and resilience. Beside her, though she couldn't see him, she sensed Marcus undergoing a similar journey, confronting his own truths, acknowledging his own failings and strengths. When the visions cleared, they stood again in the chamber, the red pedestal now dark, the blue one glowing intensely. "The trial of body," the voice declared. "To wield the power, you must be willing to sacrifice." Pain lanced through Zara, a burning sensation centered on her ring finger. Marcus gasped beside her, clearly experiencing the same agony. The rings were melding with their flesh, becoming part of them. "Accept the burden," the voice instructed, "or reject it and depart." Meeting Marcus's eyes, Zara saw the same determination she felt. Together they stepped forward, embracing the pain rather than fighting it. It intensified briefly, then subsided, leaving the rings seemingly unchanged, yet somehow more a part of them than before. The blue pedestal darkened, and the white one illuminated. "The trial of spirit," the voice said. "To be worthy of the power, you must understand its purpose." The chamber dissolved around them, replaced by visions of the ancient civilization at its height, magnificent cities powered by clean energy, people living in harmony with nature, knowledge freely shared. Then came the corruption, weapons created, power hoarded, the balance destroyed. They witnessed the cataclysm that followed, and the decision made by the last guardians to hide their greatest achievement until humanity was ready. Finally, they saw the future, multiple possible paths stemming from this moment. In one, they used the power for personal gain, ultimately repeating the ancients' mistakes. In another, they tried to share it too quickly, causing chaos and conflict. In a third, they became its new guardians, slowly introducing the knowledge to the world in ways it could safely absorb. When the visions faded, they stood again in the chamber, but now at its center glowed a sphere of pure emerald energy, the breath of creation itself, pulsing like a living heart. "You have passed the trials," the voice told them. "The choice is yours." Zara looked at Marcus, finding her own uncertainty reflected in his eyes. "What do we do?" she whispered. He took her hands in his, the twin rings pulsing in unison. "What feels right?" In that moment of connection, the answer became clear to both of them. They turned to the glowing sphere and approached it together. "We choose to be guardians," they said in unison, the words coming naturally, "not to own the power, but to protect it and share it when the world is ready." The sphere expanded, enveloping them in warm light. Knowledge flooded their minds, the secrets of the ancient technology, the responsibilities of guardianship, the path forward. When the light receded, they stood again beside the river, the stone arch towering above them. Matteo and Tupa waited nearby, showing no surprise at their return. "You succeeded," Matteo said, his tone making it a statement rather than a question. "Yes," Marcus confirmed, "though the journey is only beginning." "And Hammond?" Zara asked, looking around for any sign of the consortium leader. "He emerged from the arch some time ago," Matteo replied. "A changed man. His memories of this place, of the rings, of you, all gone. His men took him away, confused and babbling." The Guardian's mercy, Tupa added, speaking for the first time in English. Those with impure intentions are turned away, their ambitions forgotten. As they began the long journey back to civilization, Zara and Marcus walked hand in hand, the weight of their new responsibility balanced by the strength they had found in each other. "What now?" Zara asked as they followed the ancient pathway back through the jungle. Marcus looked down at his ring, now a permanent part of him, then at the remarkable woman beside him. "We have work to do, a company to transform, technology to develop slowly, carefully." He smiled. "But first, I think I need a new phone. Know anyone who does good repair work?" Zara laughed, the sound bright and clear in the Amazon twilight. "As a matter of fact, I do, though my rates have gone up considerably." "Worth every penny," Marcus replied, pulling her close. Behind them, the stone arch stood as it had for millennia, waiting for the world to be ready for its secrets. And ahead, a future neither of them could have imagined, the day a black woman casually helped a millionaire CEO fix his smartphone, unaware that the ring on her finger would change everything. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen